There, and welcome back to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com on Rivals. I'm Caleb, joined by Alan, and it is officially week 0 of the college football season. You now have no more weekends for till February, if you count the NFL season, without some sort of football going on. So that makes me really, really happy. It's the best time of year for sure. We might go through a couple of the week 0 games here in a little bit. There's not a ton happening, but hey, there's football, and maybe Georgia Tech is going to be better than we expect. I don't know. So since we last talked, South Carolina had its second scrimmage, which Alan kind of pieced together on the website GamecockScoop.com. By the way, if you did not take advantage of our 75% off offer, too bad you can't get that again, but we do this week still have a 60% off offer, Rivals network wide, which is Kickoff 2024. If you use that code at checkout, you'll get 60% off of an annual subscription to GamecockScoop.com, which means you get to read all of our premium articles, all of our insider forum posts, all that fun stuff. So definitely go check that out. That expires this weekend, so you only got a couple of days there. And then you get all that content all season long, which is a pretty good deal. 60% off, $40 for an entire year? Not bad at all. Okay, so what can you tell me about the second scrimmage? And I guess, have we started to piece together who those top 5 or 6 on the wide receiver room are at this point in the season?
So that was a point of emphasis. I think second scrimmage, you're always going to be throwing the ball a little bit more. You're more comfortable in the offense. Shane said they had an intent to go out and throw the ball more in the scrimmage. Sounds like the offense did a little bit better. He mentioned the defense sliding up some 3rd and longs, which obviously means the offense converted the ball through the air a little bit because you're not running the ball in 3rd and long. As for your other question, Dowell Loggins did say today that there hasn't been a lot of separation. I think that 5 or 6 is probably about what you thought going into camp. It's hard because like this sounds cliche and it's not what anybody wants to hear, but like I really think your starting wide receivers literally depends whatever play they want to call 1st and 10 against Old Dominion of drive 1, and the guys in the field on that play might not be on 2nd down, on 3rd. Like I think you're looking at some combination of Jared Brown, Gage Larvidan. I feel like that's probably your top 2 right now. I feel pretty good about that. And then Vandrevius Jacobs, Dale Von Campbell, Nick Harbor.
We've heard good things on Tyshawn Russell. We've heard good things on Mazio Bennett.
I think Mazio Bennett probably is in that top 5 right now, honestly. Shane said yesterday, quote, there's another Shane quote I wouldn't remind me too, but he's going to play. He's going to play a lot. I think Mazio Bennett's right in the mix to be a big part of this offense as a true freshman. And then that brings you to another Shane point that he brought up Saturday after the scrimmage, that he said he kind of was going through a mock travel roster for a road game, kind of who they'd want to take. You can take 74 players to road games in SEC play. And he said there'd be true freshmen in every position except defensive tackle. What do you think of that?
That sounds about right to me. Let's see. True freshman offensive lineman, Josiah Thompson. True freshman linebackers, we've heard good things about Fred J.R. Johnson. DBs, we've heard good things about Jalewis Solomon. Let's see.
D-line, Dylan Stewart, obviously.
Yeah, defensive end, you got Stewart. What am I missing? Tight end, we've heard good things about Michael Smith.
He's definitely.
Mazio Bennett.
Running back, I guess that means Matthew Fuller.
Is he counting quarterback? Does that mean that Reno has secured himself on the travel roster?
I mean, you're usually taking 3 to road games, or sometimes I don't know if he was. That's a good question. Are we about to have a Davis Bevel versus Dante Reno QB3 debate?
We don't have to, but I would say it's a good sign if Reno has already worked his way into that.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of QBs, Shane Beamer did. We probably should mention that Shane Beamer did, in fact, name Lenore Sellers QB1 at his press conference yesterday. We're recording this Wednesday, the 21st. That was Tuesday of the week before Old Dominion.
But you couldn't get him to name the QB3? Come on.
No, he did not name the QB. You're gonna have to wait for that little sheet of paper an hour before kickoff in Lexington, I think. But I wasn't surprised. It doesn't sound like anybody was really surprised. Apparently, Norris just said okay and went back to the drill they were doing in practice. But yeah, I think we've known it since about April, March. But Lenore Sellers is officially your guy.
Well, and today Dow Loggins said that basically they named him the starter before camp, but then said it was still kind of an open competition. So I guess this was the double, triple naming of.
Yeah, he said they wanted to like kind of establish some leadership of going into camp and have a quarterback. I took that to mean as like it's yours and let's do something to lose it kind of thing going into camp. And he obviously didn't do anything to lose it, was at least how I interpreted that.
Yeah, which I think that's the way we reported it when we first heard that back in the summer as well, or spring. How long ago was that? Beamer or someone kind of
said it at like one of the Gamecock Club meetings in May, I think.
Yeah, that's what.
And then Owl said it again to me at like their local media day, the day before the first practice.
Gotcha.
So we kind of heard it sporadically.
So back to the wide receiver point, though, I do think that you're right that it's going to be somewhat situational. As far as the names I've most consistently heard, Jared Brown is probably the top of that list.
Yeah.
Like you said, Larvadane had a big spring. I've heard it a little bit less in the fall, but I still think he's in that group. We've heard good things about Tyshawn Russell. We've heard a lot of good things about Vandrevius Jacobs, Mazeo Bennett. And then you can notice that I'm not saying the tall guys, but it's not that we've necessarily heard a ton of like negative reviews on DeLavion Campbell and Nick Harbor. Maybe a little bit of consistency stuff is what we've heard, but still, you got to think if it's a jump ball situation, you're going to put the 6'4" guys in there.
I'm just fascinated at how the combinations work and how you try to, not even so much to like, who's your top 5, who's your top 6, just going down the list in targets, but who do you want out with who? Who do you want on the same side of the formation? How are you crossing routes? Like, what are you trying to do to maximize what I think we can all agree is not as good of a unit as last year? And I think without question doesn't have the number one guy you had last year. So how are you trying to set this up where you can get the most out of this group? It's something it's high on my list of what I'm looking at for week 1.
And I think you're lucky that you get to start with Old Dominion and kind of work some of that out. It won't surprise me at all if we see like 10 different guys out there over the course of the game, especially if, they take care of business like they should and get ahead early. So I think they are probably going to experiment a good bit in that game and then maybe have a little bit more of an idea of who your consistent guys are against Kentucky. Speaking of offense, we continue to hear positive buzz around Rocket Sanders, his health. Dowell Loggins kind of doubled down today, saying that he looks like Rocket Sanders, basically. Which, if you go back and watch 2022 highlights of Rocket Sanders, which I highly encourage you to do during this week 0, that's probably a good thing for this offense.
Yeah, I actually asked Dowell just how close Rocket was to one he remembers from Arkansas, and he said he's pretty much there. On the field, off the field, practice habits, physicality, all of it's there. I said this on the radio the other day. I was doing a hit on 107.5. Just it's one of those things where like everyone's going to have their heart in their mouth the first time he gets tackled because you just need to see him bounce back up and take another carry because it's just been so long. And I get it. There's just nothing you can do to kind of get rid of that until they actually play a game. But within the bounds or within the context of everything you can do in a camp or without facing an opponent or taking 20 carries in a game, I have no reason to think he's not Rocket Sanders right now. He did scrimmage last Saturday. Beamer also had, great reviews on that. That's noteworthy because he did not scrimmage the first one in fall. So he's back to scrimmaging there. It was an 11-on-11 action in the stadium. I'm going to go ahead and say the first play of the season is a handoff to Rocket. Can we call that? First and 10 or whatever is going to be a handoff to Rocket.
I'm for it, unless maybe they play around because they know that that's the expectation and play action off the first one or something. Maybe his own read. Maybe Lenore keeps it. I do think maybe. I do think that the offensive line is very talented. Let me start with that. I do think that they're going to be further along than they were last year, but it's possible that the offensive line is not to the point that 2022 Arkansas was. I mean, they had kind of loaded up that roster even before Pittman got there. Brett Bielema, if there's anything that he was recruiting offensive linemen there. So I do think the scheme and the talent and all of those things are going to matter too. But having him 100% healthy goes a long way in covering up a lot of that. Having a quarterback as mobile as Lenora Sellers goes a long way in covering up all of that. Having an experienced zone read run game coordinator and Sean Elliott in the building does a lot to cover up all that. So I really am expecting the run game to be heavily relied upon and at least be somewhat successful. It doesn't really have to be that successful to be better than last year.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good point. Should we move on to defense? Some Clayton White from today.
Yeah. So you were really excited about his quote, or I mean, maybe not. Maybe excited is the wrong word, but you noted the quote about basically the depth that we've been talking about all off season on that front seven, allowing you to go deeper into games, and we expect them to make an impact on every play. But it also sounds like schematically, it's kind of opening up a little bit more aggression from Clayton White.
Yeah, he was asked if this depth changes anything for him specifically, and he said he can call more blitzes. He kind of was more point blank than I was expecting him to be, than a lot of coordinators to be. But he said, having fresh bodies changes what he can do. They can call more blitzes. They can be more aggressive. He said he's confident that if he calls a blitz, the guys who are going to be in the game are going to be fresh enough to rush the passer. And that's just, he didn't say that wasn't a thing last year or the year before, but I think he was kind of implying there were times that there was just no gas in the tank and he couldn't necessarily call what he wanted to call last year. You kind of look at that as like an OC not having the weapons to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, which totally makes sense too if you don't feel like your blitzes are going to get home, because then you're just leaving your back end wide open without any sort of pressure on the quarterback. So I understand that mindset, and I'm excited to see a different mindset if he feels comfortable kind of rotating those bodies in and sending them a little bit more often.
Yeah, another defensive question that hasn't been talked about much, and it doesn't really like change the schematics or anything, but I'm curious about it. And I asked Clayton, and he said there gave me a decent answer. So you have the new helmet communication system on defense that's brand new to college football this year. You can have one player with communication until there's 15 on the play clock on defense. He said they're repping a few different guys at it. He said he really likes it. I kind of think it's Debo Williams. If I had to guess, he didn't say who it was going to be when I asked, but I also think DQ Smith might be a contender as a high school quarterback. He's done the communication, checking at the line, calling out plays thing before. I'm just curious. I don't think it like changes much schematically, but do you have an opinion on a couple guys you think should have that in-helmet communication now that that's a thing in college football?
I mean, yeah, Debo would be probably my first option, both because of his veteran status, but also just where he's going to be standing on the field. He'll be able to communicate with the defensive line a little bit easier than DQ, who might have to run up and run back and all that sort of thing. And also, I feel like DBs have a little bit easier time seeing the sideline for just like hand signals or something, because they're a little bit more spread out than the defensive line is in close. So it does make sense. Maybe someone on that defensive interior, a Tonka or a TJ Sanders or something like that. Both those guys are pretty football savvy, I think. But then, of course, you're having them turn around and talk to everyone too.
Yep.
So I do think a linebacker makes the most sense, probably.
I thought about Jalen Kilgore. He's going to be playing mostly nickel. You're kind of lining up in different spots on different plays. You're seeing things from some different angles.
Yeah, the nickel spot could make some sense for sure, because then
yeah,
you're
I was just curious if you had a thought on that. It's just something new to college football this year.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one on offense is the quarterback, but that's actually not something I had thought about, is how it would affect defenses. I got a fun question from, I think it was, Adam Gorney this morning. That's a Rivals national analyst. He's putting together an article on potential freshman All-American preseason team. And he asked me like who candidates were for South Carolina. Obviously I said Dylan Stewart and I said Josiah Thompson. Who would your next name after those two be?
Mazio Bennett would be my third. I think it's a combination of his skill set and everything we've heard about him, and also just that position group is begging for someone to take over or be a big factor. And I think he can develop a rapport with the Norris pretty quickly, since they're both coming in coming into this offense. And I mean, Lenore's was here last year, but both kind of playing new, both kind of on the same trajectory. I think that'd be my pick.
Do you think he would have to like be the leading receiver in order to actually make a freshman All-American team?
Probably, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty thin line you're talking about there.
What would you like put the odds on for that?
I don't think they're that long though. I think it's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I mean, someone has to lead this team in receiving,
Yeah.
and
My immediate thought was like 25%, but that's pretty high for a freshman. I mean,
I don't know. Are Mazio Bennett's odds of leading this team in yards that much worse than Jared Brown's? Like, are they significantly worse? I don't think so. Like,
yeah,
Gage Largadanes or whoever you want to mention.
Yeah, I mean, if I were gonna pick out of the wide receiver group, I'd probably pick Jared Brown. But yeah, I'd put him in like the 30-something.
Who was your third freshman there?
Michael Smith is who I mentioned.
That was the other name I was thinking of.
I was a little bit hesitant to mention him because you do have the veteran Joshua Simon and Nick Elksness and Brady Hunt and all those guys. But if he continues to pop the way that we've heard he's popped in camp, I feel like you gotta get him out there and at least like near the goal line, give him some opportunities to go up and get it, stuff like that. It sounds like maybe even compared to some of the big wide receivers, he's like right along that level of a threat in those jump ball situations. So
yeah, I definitely don't want to imply that he's either of these guys, but we've seen in the SEC in the last 5 years, like Kyle Pitts played a lot as a freshman. Brock Bowers played a lot as a freshman. Like, if you're good enough at that position, if you have the frame to just kind of be that matchup nightmare for a defense, it doesn't really matter if you're a freshman in the way it does in some other spots.
Yeah, I mean, even when Jaheim Bell first landed at South Carolina as a freshman, he popped in camp and made some impact as a freshman. He wasn't quite as polished as the two guys you just mentioned, but
yeah,
can he be as polished as freshman Jaheim Bell? Probably. So I don't know. Yeah, that'll be really interesting. Other notes from the two media availabilities we've had for Beamer and the two coordinators. If you wonder why we suddenly went silent, the live stream cut us off, but we're gonna hop back in and finish up our way too early previews since it's still week 0. You want to talk about Wofford for a second?
I would love to talk about Wofford.
So I did write a short preview on Wofford on GamecocksScoop.com. They had a really rough 2023. They went 2-9, although they did win their last 2 games. So ended on a strong note. But they had one of the worst offenses in the FCS. They averaged 13 points a game, I want to say, which is pretty painful. Their starting quarterback, his name was Sealy the fifth. He completed 51% of his passes, had 3 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. So not much of a passing game to speak of. There are a few freshman quarterbacks they brought in that may push him to compete. It's kind of hard to find much news on Wofford. There aren't a ton of beat reporters covering Wofford preseason camp. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Point being, South Carolina should win by a lot. We don't have to go too in depth there. It should be a nice warm-up game before the Clemson game. You got anything on Wofford?
Nothing that you didn't say, other than South Carolina should just win by a lot and get ready for rivalry week.
Yeah, good job on the scheduling there, whoever did that. And sometimes that's kind of a tough game with the triple option, and Wofford can be a little bit salty, but I don't think that this is the year that they're going to be all that salty. All right, Clemson continues to avoid the transfer portal like the plague, and we'll see if it starts to bite them or not, because it's not like they've been recruiting out of high school quite at the same level either, but they're probably still going to be pretty good on defense. They return a lot of their offense, except for the running back who is with the Eagles now. Why can't I think of his name right now? Will Shipley. So I don't know. I mean, what are you expecting out of the 2024 version of Clemson? It doesn't seem like there has been a huge revamp or anything this offseason.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to revamp when you're not portaling. Don't get me wrong, this defense is still loaded. I mean, Barrett Carter has killed South Carolina the last 2 years, and he might be the best linebacker in the country. You've got a 5-star in Sammy Brown also at linebacker who's going to play a decent bit there. RJ Mickens still at safety. You still have Wade Woodaz, thinks how you say his name at line. Like, this defense is still really, really good, and I think going to be one of the better ones in the country.
Yep.
Is it wrong that I don't think the offense is? Yep, it is Maffa, right? Like that's still the guy there. That's still going to be the most of the offense. Like that's what you're worried about going in. But like the wide receiver room's not loaded. You lost Bo Collins to Notre Dame. That's going to hurt in the portal. I guess what you're betting on if you're Clemson, and it might happen, is this is the Cade Klubnik jump year in year 2 with the new OC. And if that happens, I think that takes care of a lot of your problems. I don't know if I buy that. But
to me, I don't.
The defense is going to be good. You can run the ball. I think this all kind of goes back to Klubnik, right?
And to me, I don't know what a Cade Klubnik jump looks like. It's not like he's been bad. He hit 64% of his passes last year. He mostly limited the mistakes. Threw 19 passing touchdowns, scored 4 rushing touchdowns, but it was just like fine. Like he's a good college quarterback. But Clemson country might have gotten spoiled a little bit with the back-to-back of Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, and that kind of skews your perception of what a college quarterback should be. I don't know. I think he's fine, and I think they play good defense, and I think their schedule is really nice, and they'll probably win 10 games.
Schedule is really nice, but I'm assuming you know what they have next week, right, to start this thing off?
Georgia, which is not one of the 10 that I'm including.
It's interesting.
We will. I was just saying we will learn a lot about them.
Yeah. Their 2 toughest games in the schedule are both pretty early. They've got Georgia week 1, obviously, and then I think it's game 5. I don't know if it's week 5 or if they have a bye in between, but their 5th game's at Florida State, and that could be a 3-2 start right there, and then you reel off however many wins in a row going into every week, or you only trip up once. I think they're probably going to need 10-2 to get into the playoff. So I don't know how many bids the ACC is getting, considering a 13-0 ACC team got left out last year. So even in a 12 team, I think it's like 2 max. So probably need to go 10-2 if you're Clemson, which does give South Carolina a possible chance to play some serious spoiler here again if it gets down to that point and Clemson's on that 12-team bubble.
Definitely. And to me, as far as like the way these two teams match up, they kind of match up like they matched up last year. South Carolina was already playing the 3-3-5 on defense and having some success with it. Obviously, I think South Carolina's defense is going to be even better than they were in that game, and I thought they held their own just fine. South Carolina's offense struggled against Clemson's defense. They'll probably struggle a little bit again this year, although I like to think South Carolina's offensive line's a little bit better, but your passing game probably isn't quite as strong, although you were missing Xavier Legette, so maybe there's a kind of a evenness to that too. And really what that game came down to last year was the mistakes, the turnovers. So who protects the ball better and who makes the big plays? I expect it to be close again.
What's the closest SEC team on the schedule, like style-wise or overall quality, to what you're going to see against Clemson? Is it A&M, like with a really good defense and an offense question? Like maybe Oklahoma, if like you think Jackson Arnold and Cade Klubnik are kind of like, I don't think it's like a Missouri or an Ole Miss. Obviously, it's not Alabama.
I think the two you mentioned make the most sense. I wanted to say LSU for a second, but I actually think Clemson's defense is stronger than LSU's, and LSU probably has more upside on offense. So, I think A&M and Oklahoma make a lot of sense. Clemson's built like a Brent Venables led team,
that's a good
like
point.
They have been for the last however many years since they lost their 2 number 1 overall pick NFL quarterbacks.
So this is a road game. Oklahoma's a road game. This is your non-con Oklahoma game, and I think we were both in agreement. I don't remember what week we did that episode, but that it's not a game we'd pick South Carolina to win, but it's not completely out of the question. They could go to Norman and win, and I would
Yeah.
probably feel the same about Clemson.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's likely that this is going to be a win and be bowl eligible, or win and get to 8 wins and have a great season sort of situation. So I think there'll be plenty. I mean, obviously the rivalry game in and of itself is plenty of motivation, but um, it's going to be an important game, even if it wasn't a rivalry game, as far as the overall record. So, I mean, of course, I'm excited about it. Everyone's always excited about rivalry week, but to me, these teams match up in a way that it should be close again.
Yeah. Should we pick some football games happening Saturday? And I use football games kind of loosely.
Yeah, let's save the best one for last, and we'll go through the other ones first. So Saturday at, let's see, I gotta adjust because I'm on Mountain Time. Saturday at 4 p.m. on Fox Sports 1, you have Montana State versus New Mexico.
I'll take the really, really good FCS team over the bad FBS team.
Okay. So these spreads are huge. So actually, how about you just guess the spread? Montana State is favored by how much?
Like 10?
11.5, which is
on the road for an
on the
FCS
road
team.
for an FCS
That's
team.
a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, yikes, New Mexico. All right. Similarly, we have SMU traveling to Nevada. That's at 8 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. How much is SMU favored by?
Nevada's pretty bad. They're one of the worst teams in FBS last year. I think SMU won 10 games last year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that out to like 28?
25. So,
Yeah.
hey, if you believe in 28, maybe throw some money down on it. This is not a week that I would want to pick any games because these spreads are atrocious. All right. Before we get to the prime, well, not the primetime game, it's actually a noon game, but the best game of the
Primetime in
weekend.
Ireland.
Yeah, that's true. Let's look at Delaware State traveling to Hawaii. That's at 9. When in the world? 9:59 p.m. is what it says on my well, so 11:59
Midnight
p.m.
Eastern.
Eastern.
It's a 7 p.m. game on the islands, if I have my time zone math
Did
right.
they set it as 11:59 so it doesn't change to Sunday, I guess?
Probably.
Interesting. Anyway, how big is the spread for Hawaii?
I think he told me before we started recording it was 40.
Yeah, minus 39 for Hawaii, who famously got beat by Vanderbilt last year. So Delaware State must be really not too good.
Yeah, they were 1-10 last year in the MEAC. So,
Hawaii was,
and they did miss their plane out there. I don't know if you saw that story, but they were supposed to fly out there yesterday to get adjusted on time zone, and the team bus didn't get to the airport in time. Or they had the word I saw was snafu. I don't know if that means like a flat tire or something, but they missed their flight out there, their first flight. So it's off to a great start for the 40-point underdogs, and I'm going to pick Hawaii on principle.
The over-under is 57, and they're picking Hawaii by 39. So that means that they expect Delaware State to score less than 18 points. Yeah, that sounds right.
So if you want something, last year, Delaware State played Miami, Ohio, and Gage Larvadane scored 3 touchdowns, 273 yards. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That was against UMass. Never mind. But still, they did play Delaware State last year and beat them by 42.
The one game that I will actually watch this weekend and that I suspect most people will watch this weekend at noon, Florida State is traveling to Georgia Tech. Or are they playing that in a neutral site?
In Ireland.
Oh, Ireland, like you said. So the Aer Lingus College Football Classic is at noon on ESPN. Florida State's obviously the favorite there. What do you think the spread is on that one?
I think I saw it earlier in the week, so I'm cheating a little bit, but I haven't checked in like 2 or 3 days. Is it like 10.5 still?
It's exactly 10.5. But hey, compared to those other ones we just read off, that's basically a pick 'em.
It's a conference game. It counts for something.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that one's going to be fun. It'll be interesting to see what Florida State looks like. I mean, I guess we already saw what they look like without their quarterback because he got hurt. But just see what the 2024
DJ,
version looks like.
DJ Uiagalelei is there now?
Oh, yeah, DJU. I forgot about that. Is that his third different team now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'll be fun, and I guess another reason for people in the state of South Carolina to check it out as well. Anyway, we will be back next week to talk South Carolina football and a bunch of other Week 1 games. Until then, this has been the GamecocksGroup.com podcast. We'll see you later.